I've been getting a lot of questions on stream about who is the best character to pull for in Genshin's 3.4 patch update, and while some people have been saving for months and definitely know who they're going for, a lot of people are kinda torn. So in this video, I want to give you a breakdown of Haitham, Xiao, Haitham, and Yelan's strengths, weaknesses, and team comps so you can get the most value for your hard-earned Primo Gems. We'll grade characters from bad to great in several categories including personal damage, support capability, team flexibility, free-to-play friendliness, and after that, I'll recommend some characters you'll really want to have if you want to get the max value out of the 3.4 event banner 5 stars. But of course, if you already know who you want, then by all means go for them. So let's begin the grading with the feeble scholar Haitham. Now unfortunately we don't know exactly how good Haitham will be, but we do know that he is an on-field DPS character that people have been calling Dendro Kaching. And it does make some sense why. His skill makes him rush to an enemy and then enables his attacks to do Dendro damage with the Dendro infusion. His burst is a bouncy multi-laser Dendro blast that looks a lot like Kaching's burst, but that's all surface level. The truth is that Haitham will probably play a lot more like Tartaglia than he will Kaching. What I mean by that is he'll actually require you to stick to specific rotations if you want to get the most out of his Chisel Light Mirror mechanic, which you really do because that's where he deals the most amount of damage. You see, when he has 3 Chisel Light Mirrors, he's doing his maximum amount of damage, and anything less will just make him a lot less effective. And since these Chisel Light Mirrors fall off over time, you'll want to use a special rotation to make sure you refresh them as soon as they fall off. And by special rotation, I mean something like this. Use his burst first, then 4 normal attacks, then use his skill, then attack for 4 seconds, then use a charge attack, and then attack for 4 more seconds or however long until you have other characters' skills and buffs that are ready to be refreshed. The idea behind a rotation like this is that you start off gaining 3 Chisel Light Mirrors very quickly, and then you use some sort of action, whether it's a skill or a charge attack, to refresh the Chisel Light Mirrors as soon as they fall off until the very end of his rotation. The reason this becomes very important is because if you do a poor rotation the first time, then any subsequent rotations are going to feel a lot worse and you're not going to really have anything to do with Haitham. For this reason, he's going to feel a lot more like Tartaglia because you're going to have to adhere to a lot more tight timings and be very cognizant of his cooldowns if you want to get the best value out of him. That being said, Dendro is a top tier element, so he does have a lot of potential. However, since we don't have the final build version of him, some of this will just have to be speculative. But let's give our Swole Scholar a grade based on what we know. His personal damage could be anywhere from okay to great, and this is the most variable, but it's also the most important consideration. Dendro is a very strong element. He could do incredibly well in a spread team, but we need to see the final numbers to really get a good idea of that. So if you'd like more of a post-release analysis, make sure to let me know in the comments or just come over to Twitch and tell me, and I'll make sure to make one so that you know how good he is compared to other damage dealers. Next, let's grade his support capability. It is bad. Haitham is designed as a hyper carry and totally has hyper carry syndrome, which is when a character provides little or no value beyond their own damage while on the field. His kit is totally designed so you want to play him on field as much as possible, and you can't even use him as a reliable burst support like some other characters in the game. So even though Haitham has some of the biggest arms of any character to date, he doesn't support any characters. They have to support him. Team flexibility. He gets an okay in this category. Dendro is an amazing element, and Haitham can work in just about any team that wants to use an on-field Dendro driver such as Spread or Hyperbloom. Next, let's grade his free-to-play friendliness. He gets a good in this category. Dendro teams are generally more flexible than other teams because they just kind of work with a large variety of characters, especially ones you get for free. And the floor for Dendro teams is just so much higher than typical other reactions, so it's pretty easy to just put something together and get some good results. On top of the Dendro element providing more accessible damage to a lot of different teams, Haitham also has access to the Iron Sting and the event-exclusive Umbrella weapon as free-to-play weapon options, which is really nice. Recommended characters to pair with Haitham include Nahida, Raiden, Kuki, Yaimiko, Xingqiu, Yelan, and Kokomi. Right now, Haitham's value is kind of up in the air. He could be just okay, or he could be pretty good. What's really going to determine how good he is his personal damage, his energy generation, and how many specific supports you need to run with him. And again, if you are curious on how good Haitham's going to be, just wait a little bit until after the patch drops where we can do tons of testing. But if you do want to wish for him right away, I would recommend having some of the aforementioned recommended characters because they're probably going to be really good with him. Next, we move on to the smaller green boy of patch 3.4, Xiao. Xiao is our demon pogo stick who plunges on enemies for lots of AoE animo damage. His burst slowly drains his health while giving him big jump height so he can slam down on enemies from above. The health he loses isn't too bad in a few domains or the abyss, but it is pretty annoying everywhere else. So if you get Xiao, you're going to want to have a healer in the team or invest a lot in Pita Pockets. He also doesn't generate any energy particles from his skill while he's in his burst mode, which is just lame in my opinion, and that makes it so he's a pretty energy hungry character. So let's grade one of the OG Big Three, the Vigilant Yaksha himself, Xiao. Xiao's personal damage is great. He can do a lot of AoE damage, and he can even do good single target damage with the right combos. Xiao's support capability is bad. Xiao is a hypercarry through and through and definitely suffers from hypercarry syndrome. You won't be taking Xiao as a team support anytime soon. Xiao's team flexibility is also pretty bad. Xiao has some of the most potentially expensive team comps in the entire game. He really wants a shield and an animo energy support, but also a healer. Characters like Faruzan, who seem to be tailor-made for him, are also terrible to play with him unless she's C6. Unfortunately, Xiao doesn't have nearly the amount of support other teams have, and I hope Hoyo shows our emo Dragoon some love, like real, actual love, in the future. Most of Xiao's teams include everyone on the team to be super heavily invested, including multiple 5-stars with lots of constellations, or just generally like a Zhongli, Bennett, Sucrose as an energy battery, or Layla as a shielder. Again, because Xiao has massive hypercarry syndrome, the best Xiao teams are ones where every character on the team is designed to support and amplify Xiao's damage because unfortunately, he just doesn't play very well with others. On to Xiao's free-to-play friendliness. This is also bad. There aren't any great craftable weapons for Xiao. His best free-to-play weapons are the Black Cliff Pole, which comes from the Star Glitter shop. The limited time event only weapon, the Missive Wind Spear, is also okay. But poor weapon choices and poor and difficult to build team choices make Xiao a very unfriendly free-to-play character and also really bad for newer players. Recommended characters to pair with Xiao include Zhongli, Jean, Sucrose as a battery, Layla, Bennett, Albedo, and C6 Faruzan. Next, we move on to the delightfully cheerful funeral director and Zhongli's boss, Hu Tao. Hu Tao is all about playing on the edge between the balance of the living and the dead by sacrificing huge chunks of her HP in order to give herself a massive attack boost. Hu Tao deals great damage, but the loss of her own HP can be quite spooky, even if her burst can heal a portion of her lost health. For this reason, most people really love playing Hu Tao with a shield. But expert Hu Tao players sometimes forgo the shield for more damage. So how does Hu Tao fare against our other hyper carries? Well, Hu Tao's grade for personal damage is great. Hu Tao does great damage, but she really wants a Hydro character like Xingqiu or Yelan to maximize her vaporized damage potential with charged attacks. And speaking of charge attacks, you'll pretty much exclusively want to use Hu Tao's charge attacks because they deal the most damage and make the best use out of the vaporize reaction. This means you're not only going to have to manage her health, but also her stamina to really get the full value out of her. It's also important to know that Hu Tao shines against 1 or 2 enemies, but she can suffer in some AoE situations. On to support capability. Hu Tao's grade here is bad. Even though Hu Tao buffs your party's crit rate, it's not the reason that anyone brings her along to the team, and while it's possible to do some crazy numbers with Hu Tao's burst, especially in a melt comp, it's not practical outside of looking really strong for 6 seconds on TikTok. Hu Tao is like the other characters we've talked about so far. All of her value comes from her being on field and dealing damage. So now let's talk about her team flexibility. and her grade for this is okay. Hu Tao basically needs either Xingqiu or Yelan, and that's kinda it. She just wants someone who can apply Hydra really quickly so that she can vaporize, but it's also really comfortable to play Hu Tao with a shield character like Zhongli or Layla. But a lot of really powerful Hu Tao teams don't even use a shield character and opt for more damage instead. So while Hu Tao's teams are basically limited to some sort of vaporized team with a character like Xingqiu or other very fast Hydro applicator, she does have better energy generation and self-sustain than Xiao does. Now let's talk about Hu Tao's free-to-play friendliness. Her grade for this is okay. Hu Tao can get away with running a weapon like the white tassels even though the base attack is really low. This is because most of Hu Tao's attack is coming from her HP conversion, so having a lower base attack weapon isn't as big of a deal as it is compared to other hyper carries. And she also does well with the Black Cliff Pole and the Dragon's Bane, so her weapon options are limited, but they are better than Xiao's. As far as team comps, she just really needs a fast Hydro applicator, so someone like Xingqiu, and then you can just kind of throw in whatever other supports you can give her. Recommended characters to pair with Hu Tao include Xingqiu, Yelan, Zhongli, Albedo if paired with Zhongli, Bennett and Xiangling for a Funa Rational team, and Sucrose and Amber if you want to amplify Hu Tao's pyro damage even more. Our final character in patch 3.4 is the most provocative secret agent in all of Leeway, Yelan. Yelan is a character who's often called a 5-star Xingqiu, and that's a pretty fair comparison. While she doesn't bring the utility that Xingqiu does, it's relatively easy for her to outdamage him. Her damage scales entirely off of her HP, with the exception of her normal attacks, but even those have a special charge shot that does have an HP scaling component. She can work on or off field, and is typically used as a fast Hydro applicator and off-field damage dealer. So how does our only non-hyper carry fare on this grading? Her personal damage gets a rating of good. While her own damage is good, it can be pushed higher, but as she is often the character creating the Hydro aura, she often doesn't get to take advantage of the big numbers and damage amplifications from elemental reactions. It's also important to know that she shines in single target damage and has little in the way of AoEs outside of using her skill to wrap up enemies. For a damage comparison, a well-built Yelan can hit similar numbers to a decently built Hu Tao if neither are getting any damage boost from elemental reactions. Yelan's support capability gets a great rating. Yelan provides great Hydro damage and application off-field. She also increases the damage of whatever character is on field the longer they stay on the field. Team flexibility, Yelan gets a great rating here too. Hydro off-field damage is extremely valuable for a variety of teams, including Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Vaporize, Freeze, and Electro Charge. Considering most of the best teams in the game focus on one of these reactions, it's easy to see how useful Yelan is as an off-field damage dealer and Hydro applicator. Next, let's give her a grading for free-to-play friendliness, and here she also gets a great rating. Two of Yelan's best weapons are very free-to-play friendly. Since she doesn't scale off attack like most characters, the 3-star recurve bow that has a substat of HP is very powerful for her, and it rivals or straight up beats most of the 5-star weapons outside of her own signature weapon. Everyone also gets a Favonius warbow for free, and that's another supremely good choice as it helps you recharge your entire team's energy and also gives you bonus damage when using the Emblem of the Severed Fate artifact set, which is one of her best artifact sets. These easy weapon choices combined with the plethora of teams that you can build makes Yelan one of the most free-to-play friendly characters on this list and really good for newer players. So if you aren't sure who to pull for in 3.4, go for Yelan. Even if you already have Xingqiu, having a second character like him is incredibly valuable. Imagine it like being able to have Bennett, but also having a second 5-star version of Bennett. That combined with her versatility and how easy it is to build her make her a great choice for anyone. On-field DPS characters are the most common ones we get in Genshin Impact, and you can expect to see at least one, but probably two or even more every patch. Off-field damage dealers, however, are a lot more rare and typically end up being more useful for the majority of the player base. They're also way more helpful for newer players or players that don't have a lot of characters in their roster. I hope this gives you some direction for which characters to go for. Being able to break down a character's strengths and weaknesses is really important, and it helps make sure people don't use their primos on a character that they end up regretting. So if this was helpful, make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. And if you're curious about what some of the best other characters are in the game, I have another video like that which I'll make sure to link at the end of this video. Good luck in patch 3.4, we're gonna get a lot of primo gems and free wishes. I hope all of you get early 5 stars and win your 50/50s. Remember to stay jawsome, and I'll see you in the next one.